If you want to be popular, don't be a journalist. This is an adversarial relationship by definition. And if you think your feelings are going to be hurt, then you better find something else to do, because they're going to be.
You're disgraceful. They're the most crooked. They're almost as crooked as Hillary. They may even be more crooked than Hillary, because without the media, she would be nothing. Without the media, Hillary Clinton would be nothing.
We've seen this escalate in this campaign cycle. A little bit on the Democratic side, too. Remember, Hillary Clinton went for roughly a year without holding a news conference and penned off photographers and reporters at a holiday parade.
What I see in Trump is new is at the level of attack on these institutions. It's not just quibbling, it's not just saying, I don't like those guys, I wish they'd just go away, you know, kind of an annoyance. It seems to be a deliberate and calculated attack on the institutions of American democracy, and that's very worrying.
Donald Trump's campaign, the press was the bad guy.
The first time an American president has actually declared the press as an enemy of the people. So the real question is, will they go beyond these very, vitriolic words to actual repercussions and economic sanctions against the press? Will they actually wind up putting people in jail? That would be the ultimate sort of dictator move.
So many dishonest reporters.
We have to fight the media.
Bunch of phony lowlifes.
The world's most dishonest people.
My name's Sopan Deb, and I was a CBS reporter that covered the Trump campaign full-time for a year and a half. I traveled for a year and a half covering the campaign. Donald Trump's campaign rallies were very much more like concerts than they were typical political rallies. He'd hold them at these big arenas and thousands of people would go, and it would be kind of like a political Woodstock situation, and people would show up dressed as Donald Trump. They'd wait for hours. Sometimes, the night before they would line up outside the door just so they can get a good view of Trump. In terms of being a reporter at a Trump rally, it was interesting because you'd be in this press pen. You couldn't leave the press pen when Trump was on stage, which is slightly abnormal at the very least. Donald Trump would turn the crowd against the press. He would say, "Oh, look at the dishonest press back there," and then you have thousands of people turning around and booing you. I got comfortable with being booed by the crowd. Well, I shouldn't say I got comfortable. I was never uncomfortable with it because it's information to me. As a reporter, we're always kind of taking in information. For me, how I process it was, well, why are they booing me? What's the impetus behind it? What's the motive? Why do they feel like this is the emotion they want to express right now?
I was at a Trump rally in Pingsboro, Massachusetts in 2015. It was October of 2015. At the rally in Pingsboro, there was a room full of people. It was a gymnasium in a school, and it was pretty full. And when Trump asked everybody to turn around and boo at the press, we were all penned off in the back. But I wasn't scared. That wasn't something I felt. I think I was already thinking about how these people were reacting to this one man telling them to behave a certain way. Then, and even now, I've been questioning how us as journalists are going to get across to reach out to these people who don't believe us anymore.
The vast majority of Trump supporters that I met did not treat me poorly. Most of them were warm, and they just wanted to have their views heard. There were a handful that clearly did not like the press, did not like me, and did not like the color of my skin.
Lying press, liar! You're the enemy! You're ashamed of your profession! You're ashamed! You're an embarrassment to your profession! You're an embarrassment!
I was shooting some footage of the crowd outside of a rally in Reno, and a guy repeatedly asked me if I was shooting photographs on behalf of ISIS, the terrorist group. That came a couple weeks after I was at a rally in Las Vegas. And as I was conducting the interview, a guy comes up, interrupts it, and tells me to go back to Iraq, where I came from. And so, yeah, there are a couple of those incidents sprinkled in there. It wasn't the totality of my experience, and certainly I don't think it represents the Trump, supporters as a whole. But yes, this subset certainly existed.
So I covered Hillary Clinton rallies, Trump rallies, as well as a rally with former President Obama. So at all the other Trump rallies, I had really no problem talking to supporters. I just put on a big smile and was really friendly, and they sometimes were weird about giving me their names, but it wasn't super hard. But what I didn't expect was how different they were going to be depending on how large they were. When it came to the real rally in a big arena with thousands of people, I think the big difference was I really just couldn't bring myself to ask them for their names because I feared they were gonna try to take my cameras or tell me to delete their photo, or a whole number of issues that they could throw at me. I got a shot of a man with huge muscles, and he was yelling USA and yelling at the press and the whole thing, and I got a shot of him, and I knew it was worth it for me to sacrifice not having his name to have him not antagonize me in that moment.
So I photographed quite a few Donald Trump rallies and Hillary Clinton rallies. One rally I went to, I photographed a woman who was just like interesting looking, like she's wearing a lot of Donald Trump like garb, and I went to ask her for her name, and she was just like, no, you can't do that, you can't take my photo, you can't use it, you have to delete it. I've had a couple where I would even like point my lens at someone and they would like glare at me or like say like no, or like literally like I've had people walk across the room to like avoid being photographed. They really believe what he says about the dishonest media, so they truly think that you're going to sort of like take their photo and manipulate it to mean something else.
When I was in a zone for these rallies, I really kind of felt like I was in combat, and I had a job that I needed to do, and I wanted those shots. I knew in my gut that this was historic and that I was amongst some of my photographic heroes.
So I voluntarily went up to New York City on election night to cover Trump headquarters. One of the really surreal moments for me was one guy came down the street and started yelling, at the various media reporters surrounding him, you did this, this is your fault, you did this. And I don't know whether he was a Clinton supporter, he was anti-Trump, I'm not really sure. But it was really interesting to kind of stop for a moment. We're taking pictures, and then I realized that all of these reporters are in a circle around this guy who is this guy? Why does his opinion matter? And I just think that was a really strange moment for me to kind of question what we were covering. But I do have to say that I had to consider that night, whether I still wanted to be a journalist, and if it's worth it to put yourself in situations where you might not feel safe or where you might have people questioning your motives or, accusing you of lying or whatever.
On March 11th, there was supposed to be a Trump rally in Chicago. And that was always going to be a kind of a tough place for Trump to hold a rally in. And there were protests organized for days, if not weeks, to try to shut down this Trump rally. And on the evening of the rally, we were inside this arena on this college campus in downtown Chicago. And you could already feel something wasn't right. You had hundreds of protesters inside. And then we started seeing aerial pictures from outside. You had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of protesters packing the streets outside. And it just didn't feel right. And then an announcement comes down. Trump staff announces that they're postponing the rally. And the minute this announcement came down, the pandemonium breaks loose in this arena. Unlike anything I've ever seen before. You're seeing shoving matches, people yelling and going at each other, Trump supporters going after protesters, protesters going after Trump supporters. It was a total spectacle. And then this spilled out onto the street. And I have my camera with me, and I'm shooting footage furiously, like any reporter would do. And while I'm shooting protests outside, out of nowhere, a couple police officers grab me and throw me to the ground, put a boot to my neck, and arrest me. Eventually, I was picked up, thrown in a police van, eventually charged with resisting arrest. Well, thankfully for me, my camera was rolling, as well as a number of other cameras in the area that show that there was no resisting arrest. There was never there was nothing that I did wrong. As far as how I was able to get back to work and start covering rallies again, and we have a job to do. That's how it is.
The news is fake because so much of the news is fake.
No, I'm not going to give you a question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
The public doesn't believe you people anymore.
I don't think that journalism is like a hobby or a easy job that you just kind of pick up. And I think this really cemented that idea that if you're signing up to be a journalist, you have to sign up for the good and the bad and report the facts as you see them.
You need to develop a little thickness in your skin. Keep your eye focused and targeted on the story.
It's important to hold political figures accountable. If that's something that interests you, then you should do it, because there aren't enough of us. There are not enough people fighting that battle.
And journalists as a group, organizations, newspapers, television stations, all sorts of journalistic groups need to band together to say to the government, we are not going to put up with your bullying, and we will cover you. When you try to do this, we'll cover it and we'll make sure the American public knows what's going on.